Hello, welcome to Math for All, where we strive to make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. I'm Molly Vokey.
And I'm Heidi Subnani. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're really excited to be speaking with Carl Oliver, and we hope that you will let us know where you are watching from. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube at our channel, Math for All Show. And we are going to be talking this evening about what the future looks like when we look back and say after pandemic. That's when everything really started changing. What changes are we talking about? This comes up all the time in schools.
Well, this is a super interesting topic, and I feel like, it could go a lot of different ways, and we're already kind of getting to the point in schools where I was having a conversation the other day with teachers and saying, like, is it too late? Like, have we already missed the boat on making some changes and having them be permanent? So I'm anxious to hear what Carl's gonna to say about that. So I get the privilege of introducing Carl. So Carl Oliver is an assistant principal at City as School High School in New York City, where he oversees the math department, teaches the class, and manages programming for the school. He has spent over 17 years in schools, beginning with his undergraduate at Michigan State, followed by graduate work at Harvard Graduate School of Education, and 10 years as a teacher in New York City. He is active on Twitter as he is a former member of the Global Math Department Board and also a coordinator of many #MathPhoto Summer Photo Challenge. He has spoken frequently at NCTM conferences, a former member of the NCTM Publishing Committee, and currently on the committee for the NCTM DC Annual. So let's bring Carl in.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you all?
We're doing great.
Doing really well.
We're doing great. We're happy to be having this conversation with you today. So
thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We always love to start with what is your math story? So it helps us and the listeners know a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, I think I was telling this story to someone the other day. It probably starts in high school. I remember, there's also my teaching story, which, like, in high school as a senior, when I got in trouble once, one of my econ teacher told me I was going to have a detention, and I was like, do you really want me to have to stay after school? I have to miss my sports. Like, how about we work out a deal? And so the deal we worked out was that I got to teach one of his other classes. So I went in and I taught the class, and it was.
Wow, you're a smooth operator.
It was maybe 17-year-old Carl was pretty smooth. I don't know if I still have it. I don't know. But at least I was smooth enough to pull that off. But it didn't really work out because it was really hard. I was like, whoa, there's a lot to think about, like actually being in front. I thought it was going to be just like hanging out with my friend, but it's like, oh no, it's like different when you're in charge. And the lesson I planned was like nope, it's terrible. And he like took over after like 10 minutes and was like, it was clear, like, wow, he knows what he's doing. And it changed the way I looked at teaching, and it changed. And then it was like, well, now I have to do it too, because I can't let this thing like beat me. I have to get really good at teaching. And so I figured I would go teach for like a year or two, nail it, master it.
Yeah.
And
then to go do something else.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. Just, hanging out.
I'll
probably nail it in a few more months. I'll have it down, and then that's it.
Yeah, and then you can just totally move on.
Yeah, I'll do whatever. I'll work on my TikTok. But my math story, I think so. Yeah, that was my econ teacher. I went to college thinking I was going to do econ, and in college I came across the book Radical Equations with Bob Moses that posed math as a civil rights initiative, and I thought about how like valuable it would be to actually like work on that, and I think that was really valuable. I was lucky and also an undergrad to work on like connected math, the curriculum was in on
Molly
campus.
too.
So
Yeah, that was what I used that when I was teaching.
oh, no way. Yeah, it's super popular. And like at the time, like revolutionary.
Mhm.
At the time,
Yeah.
it's like, what? Expiration? Like,
Mhm.
so seeing the people in the university like trying to get it out, just trying to like one of the things that I liked about their office was right by the door next to the light switch, you know, of the big open space that everybody shares, was a letter to the editor from, I think, New York Times. I don't know. Let's say New York Times. It might be something else. But it was a big newsprint editor that they framed, and it was essentially like why you shouldn't trust this kind of math, you know. And they kept it there as a reminder. And like some of the names, there was like 40 names on it. Some of the names were people like in the building, like 2 floors down. And it was a cool, like walking into a place where it's like, yeah, they're not ready for this. Like the world, like we're helping like really change the way that everybody is looking at math by me coming in and working on my little, you know, formatting, copy editing stuff that they had me doing. And it felt like there's this larger cause to make math what it needs to be for our students to like enjoy it, for them to have better experiences than you know I had, and then certainly a lot of other students are having. And so that's sort of what like inspired me, was like seeing not just like math as the content, but also math as this like civil rights like initiative, like a chance to really make change.
Cool. And how long ago were you doing that?
Well, so that was during my undergrad. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be in 2002, 2003, because that's how old I am now.
That's about the right time.
Wow, that doesn't make you that old. I'm like, oh.
It sounds. I'm realizing it as I'm saying it. It's like, wow, that was a long time ago. Like the version I was working on, I think it was like CMP version 2. So they had the first one. I worked on the second one.
We were around and in the classroom for 1. So.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's really cool. That's a interesting start, right? And a different perspective for sure. I love that.
Yeah, I think like in high school, like math wasn't always that much fun. I feel like in the classes up until maybe like 5th grade, it was like, oh, cool, it's fun. But then 5th grade is when like the timed test starts, and then there's stress, and then you get separated, and it's like, how come I'm not in that class, and what does that say about this other class that I'm in? And it just so that after leaving that, I didn't really want to teach math, and then after thinking about how like inspirational it could be to pursue teaching math and to provide opportunities for students to look at math differently, and looking at the work of people who are actually like doing that, or trying to change the field, and really going out on a limb and creating exciting necessary, you know, lessons and units, then it's like, oh, well, cool, then now I wanted to do it. So I think that changed my mind.
Cool.
Were you able then to use that in the classroom, or that idea? Because I know that's sometimes part of the problem, right? You work on these ideas, or you think about ways to make math more fun or more realistic, or focus on bigger issues, and then you get into the actual classroom, and that's not what your department is about, or it's not what your district curriculum program is about, or any of those kind of things. And so it becomes like this under the radar version of trying to fit those things in. Or did you find that you had that ability to incorporate those things right from the beginning?
I think I did find that. I got lucky. I got to work at a school. It was like a brand new school, and they were kind of like, run with it, like see what you can do.
Wow.
And there was a teacher. There was like I don't know what to call it. It's like I want to say it's a coach, administrator person. her name's Kamsi, and she was amazing. And she was a math teacher that then was supervising the math and science. And so she could come in and be like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. Like, that's great. Listen, great. But you could also, and so then I was able to go from where I was starting from, which is like, let me try to change the world like right now and like move into, but how do we do it sustainably? What kind of like habits in the classroom do we need to like enforce so that the management's okay? And like, what are ways? So yeah, I think in the way that I just entered into the profession, starting with this idea of like, started with a blank slate, even if it didn't end up actually being that blank, probably just changed the way I approach everything. And so I got really comfortable like formatting stuff in Microsoft Word or now Google Docs. And like, if I'm looking at a textbook and I'm like, oh, that's a cool problem, well, I'm just going to rewrite it, because that way I can put it in the same format as the rest of my problems and give students space to write what they think and use a context that matches their reality instead of it being about stuff they don't understand or stuff that I'm not prepared to have a discussion about. So I can like, make sure that they're having a discussion, that they're having it about something that I want them to have a discussion about.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think this leads right in, right? I mean, this is such an interesting thing to think about. And I feel like I've been having lots of conversations around this, so I'm anxious to talk about it. If the future us looks back and says, after the pandemic, that's when everything really started changing, what changes are we talking about? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to preface this by saying I don't have a time machine, so I can't give the answer. This is a question that it's not like I'm going to like lay out like the plan. This is just what I'm thinking about.
Dude, I wish you could do that though, right? We need a plan.
I mean, I'll be honest, if I did have a time machine, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably go like check out the lottery scores and go.
Okay. That's a more realistic answer. Yeah.
Right. That's for sure. Yeah. That's for sure.
But I think maybe one way to start this is to think about like, what are people saying already? Like the kind of things that people say are going to change after the pandemic with education. Run the gamut, I don't know. I feel like people talk about how we're like, I don't know. They talk a lot about the profession of teaching and how like valuable teaching is, and we've seen it in the pandemic how it's so important. Teachers are great, and it's like that would imply that in the future, I imagine like union rules would change, like workers' rights. Teaching as a profession would look different. Maybe congressional like mandates would fund teacher development and teacher collaborations in a way that would be in line with what people are saying now. I hope that's what's going to happen.
I would love for that to happen, because one of the things Heidi and I do professional development, and I mean, most of the time when we are with teachers, I mean, right now it's really hard because subs are such an issue, but we're like, just by us coming in is often the time when they are able to get together. But outside of that, there's so little time for them to collaborate and to work together and try to create lessons that are really meaningful, and looking at student work and doing all the things that are so good for kids and for teachers in both the students' growth and the teachers' growth. But time is always such an issue. So I would hope that what you're saying would become a reality, because it isn't right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a much more hopeful version of what it could be. I feel like maybe I'm just looking at it from like more of a dystopian version of where we are, and conversations that I continually hear from others in education generally, and then even more so those who are serving every day in the classroom or in administration, is this just leaving the profession. Like, I'm done. I'm good now. And I think it's such a weird thing. I think pandemic in many ways, a lot of the issues were already there. They became more in the spotlight. Like the cracks were already there. They just got bigger, or they became more apparent, or we had a moment to stop and look and see those things that
much more public.
Yeah, have been kind of, for some people, and for some of us who have the privilege to act like they don't exist, like those things have always been there. And pandemic didn't necessarily change that. It just highlighted some of the major issues in ways that we're getting to crisis point. Where I just got tonight an email from my kid's school that they had another teacher leave. They can't find us, so they're combining classes. I live in a suburb of Boston. It's not like, normally speaking, this would not be an area that you would, like, and parents are up in arms. And they're like, well, this is going to be the reality of what happens to us if we don't address and really honor the people who are teaching our children.
Yeah.
How is it at your school, Carl, in terms of teachers this year? And do you have enough? And what is the sub situation? And
I mean, yeah, like I'm an administrator, so I'm like in the seat of trying to make it all work. I think that the task we were given over the last 2 years was like impossible. It doesn't make sense. Like now they're going back and they're like issuing different things to make up for it. Like, for example, every time someone had a case, we were supposed to call it into this line, and those ended up taking like hours for an administrator to call in, have the information, the person there to take it in, and then like come back to us and say, okay, if there were 3 kids in one classroom, then you need to close the classroom and email these parents and do all this. Like getting all those ducks in a row took a lot of time. And now like our union, the administrator union, got like 5 hours of time to do per session for those things, right? So they went back and like are allowing people to get paid for it. There's a similar thing with the teachers. They said, okay, we're going to go back and give you time for there was like a vacation that they made all the teachers sort of offer online classes through. So it was really tough. There has been people going back and like preparing it, if you will. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think then it would also make sense to make sure, like, going forward, the work and the job is like lined up with reality where you like value people's time and you try to make it more sustainable and things like that. I think that's been like a big thing in our school, is really trying to like make things sustainable, trying to not overwhelm people because it was like really hard. And I don't know if that's connected to whatever the conversations are about that'll like decide how teaching looks, at least in New York City, in the upcoming years. I'm sure there's going to be like another contract that has to get negotiated, and another like we get our funding from New York State, like things like that. I wonder, are those going to still have this thinking and this memory, or are they gonna bring in people who are actually in the classroom at that time? Because you can't just roll out the last contract and say, yeah, we're just doing this again, right? Everybody, we're agreed. We're just going to do this again. Maybe a little cost of living increase, and then we'll call it a day. So yeah, that's one hope. Sorry, this got really administratory. I don't know.
But that's okay. I mean, because I think it all relates, right? I mean, I'm thinking about some of my teachers that I was working with last week, and they're all covering classes because there's no subs, and my one high school that I'm working in right now, they're all just doing it and they're spreading themselves so thin. But like going back to what you were saying, like the idea of being able to have collaboration and working together is now they don't even have their preps because they're covering classes. And I mean, I'm sure they're getting paid for that, but
yeah, I think like the idea that teachers' job is to like be watching kids, it was like the assumption going into the pandemic, and as it unfolded, it was like it was put into action. It was like, yeah, that's the plan. We're just going to figure out ways. We'll have like people are teaching, no one that I know of, but I've seen online of you're teaching a class with whoever shows up, and then you're teaching a remote class at the same time. Like this stuff that doesn't even equate to the job that people signed up for, that we are all paying for public schools, if you think about it. And I want to compare it to like what I understood of lesson study, because I was able to do lesson study a couple times. Lesson study is great, right? And it comes from like from Japan, and it's like a collaboration between teachers where they look at a lesson really closely, they think about how to make it better, and then they use that in their time. And in that country, that's like part of your job. Your job isn't just like, I want to be in front of kids for 5 hours straight with just enough time to like go to the bathroom and eat lunch.
Yep.
And I would think that these scenarios right now that we're in, where with the coverages or the class sizes, that it's what it just wouldn't happen. It would be like built in that we'd say we want the collaboration, we want to make it happen. And I think that certainly in math, like you could talk about the Japanese performance in math on the international test and compare it to the U.S. As like a sign of why it would make sense as well.
I definitely have done a fair amount of lesson study work in one particular district. And even pre-pandemic, when I was doing that work, it was hard because I don't work in the district. So when I would come in, we would do this, but it always had to be like modified because then I might not be coming back for a certain amount of time. So even in pre-pandemic times, trying to do that model that they had in Japan was even not that easy. Like that, it needs to be easier. I would hope that we would come out of this understanding that teachers' professional development is crucial, at least among teachers. I mean, I don't know that the general public realizes how much work goes into teaching. And maybe they saw this, or many families saw how much work teachers were doing during the quarantine. But I would hope that some changes would be made so that professional development would be, like, as you said, just part of the job, not something that we can say no to, something that we do all together and we learn and grow.
Yeah. When I was on a plane, or I was supposed to be on a plane the other day, but I was sitting in the terminal trying to figure out like why the plane wasn't there. And they were like, well, the plane's gonna land, so we have to wait for it to land, and then maybe we'll go. Maybe if the plane's there, we should be going, right? And they were like, no, we track how many hours the pilots are awake, like not even flying. So right now the pilots are like sitting over there in the terminal waiting to go, and that time is going to get subtracted from the flight time, and if it doesn't add up, then we're not even going to put the plane in the air. I'm like, well, this is a great idea. This is what we should be doing with teachers too. It's the same idea, right? Like, we know that the teachers are going to need this much time for professional development. If we can't get that going, then like the district needs to send in like substitute teachers, or Congress needs to come with this like ARPA funding. Like, we need to send in, it's like an emergency. It's the equivalent of the same kind of problem. So I think that would be cool. Another thing I thought about and thinking about what Heidi was saying with the teachers leaving and things like that is like who's going to replace them, right? They're probably going to be new teachers, and new teachers are going to have just come out of this pandemic. Like they had their education interrupted by this, and so they're going to they're going to need professional development like more than maybe the teachers in the past. Like that's even more reason why the professional development should be highlighted if the future goes the way that I imagine.
Yeah. And to math specifically, Carl, I mean, I've been working for the same company doing professional development for like 11 or 12 years. And I feel like I have grown a lot in my own learning in those years, but I feel like I go into schools and I'm still seeing new schools to me that are in the same place as schools I was seeing 10, 11 years ago in terms of math teaching and math learning. And when I go to these conferences, it's very hopeful, and everyone there loves math, and everyone wants to make grand changes and do exceptionally awesome problems and build all these wonderful routines. And then you go back out into the world, and I mean, there's so many teachers and so many schools that change is just very slow. So that I feel like the initiatives that we're working on today are not a whole lot different than, say, 10 years ago. They might look a little bit different and might be more widespread and more people might know, but I don't feel like it's a ton different.
One thing I hope is that now that standardized testing had like a little bit of release, like they pumped the brakes on that, people, and social emotional learning was also like prioritized in a lot of people's schools, certainly my daughter's schools, that maybe people would try some of these things that before might have sat on the shelf. I'll say in my classroom, I had been thinking about doing the thinking classroom for a while.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And so we did it this cycle, and it was like the best. It's so far been the best that I've ever done it, and I hadn't done it since 2019. And my co-teacher and I, like every day, we were like, all right, we're gonna stand up, we're gonna go on these whiteboards, and we're just gonna like work on these problems. There isn't gonna be like a lot of pressure or things to do, and it's been, I feel like, a really like refreshing relief for the students. Because
can you describe a little bit what that is for people who don't know about Thinking Classroom?
Yeah, the Thinking Classroom, thought up by Peter Liljedahl. I might not have pronounced that correctly. And
good job. That's good. I always have to say that. I'm like, well, make sure I do this right.
It's the one that you just read in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, are my mouth gonna be able to produce that sound?
Yeah.
I tried. So he did a bunch of research on different like aspects of a classroom, and then took a lot of these aspects and sort of weaved it together into what's called the Thinking Classroom. And there's all these elements. Oh,
I'm loving that. I am loving that little head in the background. So cute.
So the Thinking Classroom, the big thing is the students come in. There's no front to the room, right? There's whiteboards everywhere. There's not like desks in a row. The desks are sort of grouped, and then the students sit randomly in groups. I don't think we haven't really sit randomly in groups because, but what we do is after they come in and they get seated, then we say, okay, now that everybody's here, we're gonna stand up, get in random groups, and go to the whiteboards. The whiteboards is short for vertical non-permanent surfaces, and the vertical non-permanent surfaces help students ideas like this flow faster. It's it's sort of like there's a whole, that's one arm of his research. So imagine like groups of students around a room looking at a whiteboard with a marker, and the teacher just throws out a problem, and they all go at it however they can, and they talk to each other, they work on it. I think so. The problem isn't something that I'm giving them because I've rehearsed it. I've shown them this is how you do it. The problem should be something that's like new and unique. And if you're doing it right, I don't even think they necessarily even see the problems. You just sort of like read it to them, and they get a chance. They have to like pull the problem apart in their group. So you sort of give them just like the little, just enough, like just a little bit of information, and they break it down. And then when you go around, you don't give hints. You're not like saying like, oh, you need help? Here, let me show you an example, or let me give you this thing. But you do say, well, look over there at this group, that they have something going. You should probably check that out. So that all the groups are all thinking at the same time, and it's about sharing ideas. It's not about like producing work, everybody producing identical habits. So yeah, I think that's
think tank, right? It's like a think tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it shares this idea of like collaboration, and we're all working together, and we're talking to each other, and like there's really not even like right or wrong answers, because the goal is to get to the answer. But making mistakes along the way, it becomes pretty clear like, oh yeah, this is helpful, because if I did it wrong, but I figured out why it's wrong, and I can look over there, somebody else, and they have something else going, so I can just kind of like, copy that thinking over onto my whiteboard, and then build on it.
Which previously has been quite frowned upon.
Yeah.
Copying others' work, right? I mean, historically, you get in trouble for that.
Yeah. Honestly, we've had trouble, because as we're getting to the end of this class, we have to get students to do these individual projects.
Yeah.
And so the students are just like, oh yeah, we're just here. Like, what did you do? I did this. Da, da, da. And it's like really, really hard. I think one of the things I've done in a lot of my projects that I try to do is to make the project unique, to give the student like a lot of choice. So about maybe like little things, but enough choice that everybody's going to be individual. So that way that cuts that down a little bit. So hopefully that'll happen as we go on with this project.
Yeah. Sounds like a wonderful place to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What would your like perfect scenario be for the math classroom if we were able to live out some of the changes that should be made when we look back at this time?
Yes.
I don't know. So I think, well, one big thing is technology should totally be rethought. It should just be assumed that it's there, the same way that like you're assuming that they have pencil and paper 2019 or whatever. I think from now we should assume people have access to devices that can do the calculations, and we should assume that they have the ones that are like free.
Amen.
Like, why are we expecting kids to pay a bunch of money for things that could work the same as other things that are free?
Yeah.
I don't understand. And we know most kids have phones or have access to a phone. So like we could just do that. We could say, okay, things that you can get on a phone that are free, let's assume kids have it. And if they can't have it, we can provide it for them.
Yeah.
Because that's something that happened in the pandemic too. I don't know how it worked in other districts, but somehow within 2 weeks, every student, anybody who said I need one, got one. Got a device with a keyboard attachment, mostly iPads with cell phone service. It's insane. Like, it's insane. I couldn't explain this to 2019 Carl.
No.
They would tell me I was. So yeah, I think now that technology is like it's on the docket, it's on the table.
And no excuses for it, right? Like we shouldn't have that excuse for, oh, well, we can't. No, well, we know we can. We know we can get it. We know we can put it in the hands of all kids. So let's that we can't.
Yeah.
We choose not to many times, but let's do away with the we can't.
Right.
We can.
Yeah.
You just reallocate.
Yeah. Or like put it out if it's a like if the budget is really an issue, then like it really needs to be on the table of like, well, what other things are getting funded right now? Let's really look at this. Let's ask charities or people like we need to get this funding up so that we can provide what we know is needed because we can do it. Like we don't even have to imagine like, oh, this is so crazy. Like we know how much it costs. Somebody does. The budget office, they could tell you, they could run the receipts and be like, well, this is what we paid last year. Now we know what we got to do to fund it next year. And most of those kids are going to keep their device, so it'll be cheaper. So yeah, if everybody has technology, then things I feel like fluency is going to change dramatically. The conversation around like number facts, knowing how to memorize the times table test that I didn't enjoy in the 5th grade, like that can be rethought because yes, I mean students could memorize a bunch of stuff and go for it. Like that's fine. There's kids who memorize their lines for the poem in Shakespeare because that's what they want to do, and that's great. But like that's not required for literacy. So I don't think that memorizing timetables is necessarily required for like mathematical literacy. The types of fluency I think that we need are like understanding different ways of thinking, being able to have like multiple strategies to approach a multiplication problem. So that way when the multiplication problem comes up and it's not, you don't just have it memorized and you produce it without actually understanding like why you actually, you don't do like multiplying fractions. The strategies that people use for that are totally different from multiplying numbers. And like, it shouldn't be. We should be flexible enough with our strategies to take like 1/2 times 3/4 and work it the same way that we could do like 2 times 3. I would think that like fluency would change if we knew if technology was there. If we said, okay, we don't need to teach kids a whole bunch of memorization. We don't need to do it. And
that's a whole giant philosophy, right? That's making like small changes in places, but it's so huge and so ingrained in teachers that it's a hard one to shift.
Yeah, teachers will say like, you're gonna need this. You're gonna need to know how to do this procedure when you get to the 6th grade or the 8th grade or the 12th grade or whatever.
Yeah, and like long division.
Yeah. Right now, somebody has that for homework because their teacher is convinced that this is the most important thing and they're going to need it. And they're also probably getting cursive from the teacher down the hall. And like neither of them are necessary for the world that they're going to inherit. So I would love it if that could be a thing that could shift.
I want to live in the world that you're going to create. So let me know when you create that and I'm heading your way.
Okay, I'll get the time machine started first, and then we're gonna go back in time, build the world.
Perfect. This is all working out really well.
Yeah, we're getting so much done here on this call. This is great.
I know.
This is the most productive Zoom call I've had all year.
Well, how can we learn more about you? How can our listeners find the work that you're doing?
I have a blog. It's at coasttocoast.me/Carl, and maybe this is like nerves. This morning when I woke up, I had a dream, and in the dream, like I was sleeping in the dream, and then I woke up and I was like, I need to write in my blog more.
Yes.
I haven't written in my blog since like 2021. I haven't. It's been a while.
There's been some things happening,
there's
things.
Yeah, all of this.
Yeah.
Gesture broadly at the
juggling of the things.
Yeah. So when I start doing it again, then I'm gonna start posting it there. So that'll be one thing. And then I'm on Twitter. So I'll also start posting on there too. I'm really lucky to be on the committee for planning the NCTM annual conference in 2023 in DC. So that will be a place of certainly painting a very vivid picture of a wonderful possible future. The committee that is on that is like amazing, and the organization has already said like we'll do whatever. We're changing a lot of the ways that things go to have more like community, and to also have more like depth. The conference that's in LA, NCTM LA, in the fall, they're gonna blaze like a trail and do a whole bunch of like innovative things. And so you should definitely go to that if you're on the fence. But after that, I think then we'll look at their things and try to like build on it and go further, like stand on the shoulder of giants kind of thing. So that'll be really cool doing that. And I've been trying to write a book. I gotta stop saying that. I am writing a book.
You just put it out there, so you're doing it.
Yeah. No, I'm doing it. Like I have a publisher. It should be should happen. And I just need to find time with all this other stuff to do it.
Excellent. Well,
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to that. What is your book about?
The book is about preparing students to take on the challenges that's going to face them, that we're relieving for them, in the future. That is kind of like like my book.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I'm excited about that. I'm excited.
Yeah. If I when I finish it, can I come back? Like,
of course.
Can we do another one of these?
Yes. 100%.
I love it.
We love
to have that conversation.
You let us know when you're done, and we will sign you right up.
Yes.
Okay, cool. It'll be a little motivation. I gotta start typing first, though.
Yes.
That's great.
Little bits at a time, right? That's what that's what Molly and everyone was telling me. You eat this elephant one bite at a time. So
super gross, but
a little bit at a time.
Well, we're so happy you could join us tonight. We appreciate you taking some time out, and we're so looking forward to talking to you again about your new book.
And seeing at NCTM as well.
I know, that's true. That will happen before it, probably.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully not. Maybe we'll have at the same time. We'll
all
see.
Right. Well, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for doing this and finding ways to connect math educators and putting stuff out on the internet. It's definitely needed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Oh, that was so fun. Gosh, I like talking about a future world that doesn't exist right now.
What it could be, right?
Yeah.
Or what we're making it. Maybe that should be. It's not what it could be. It's what we're making.
True. That was a negative mindset I just had there, and turn it around.
Oh no.
All right. Well, our next show seems like it's not for a while. We have here in Massachusetts, we have school vacation in April, so we're taking a bit of a break, and we will be talking to Brandy Wade on April 27th. So we're excited about that. And
yes, so we thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that you will keep math creative, curious, and inclusive for all. Good night, everyone.
Bye.